this, but we unlock some ABC book of the emotions, and we can go to the lowest cognitive process of emotions, and we know that this is very related to survival instinct.
Can I ask a question? Did you ask your program about Donald Trump?
That's a very good question, because actually, last week we had a journalist from El Mundo, the second newspaper from Spain, and she was quite skeptical about what we're doing. So she said, I would like to test it myself and ask myself the question live to make sure that it was real. So first she asked about women, and the AI came back with something very positive about women, and I will share this. And then the second question was Trump, and the AI came back with a lot of surprise and a little bit of fear. Then she went to another question like about ISIS. So I said maybe we shouldn't go in that kind of questions because I was getting scared that the machine could wrong. I really don't know what's going to be the output. And it was really scared and sad and fear. So the next question was about AI. So she asked what it is about AI. And the response, the emotional response was a lot of happiness and also fear. So it was interesting to see that all these questions were actually really well replied by the chip.
So, talking about fear, the next question up is, will callous treatment of robots adversely impact our own emotional health and cognitive development?
Well, because I hang out around with a lot of people who think machines should have rights, I think I'm going to give their rationality here. So they present a narrative like this. They say slaves didn't have rights once, and then black people didn't have rights, and women didn't have rights, and then animals didn't have rights, and then somehow machines don't have rights, but they should have rights. And they seem to have created this framework inside of their head that connects women, slaves, artifacts, all together. And what's really interesting about that is actually the worldview of Aristotle's advocacy of slavery. So in it he said, and I need to be clear about this, people in the time of Aristotle were like you and I. They might have spoken differently, but they weren't animate tools. They weren't spanners walking around, with arms. They were actually human beings. But the only way you could instrumentalize and treat them as slaves is if you dehumanize them. So that was the first thing he did. He dehumanized them. That's what slavery does. If you want to create inequality and power over others, you have to dehumanize. The second thing he said is that you don't have to have a relationship with a slave. So the slave has to have a relationship with the master, but the master does not have a relationship with the slave. And that sets up a world of non-reciprocity. And as human beings, I'm very pleased that we live in a world where we consider each other human beings, and we need to do more of that. And the third thing I think he did, which is very relevant to this, was he said, now wouldn't it be great if we could develop tools that could animate themselves and we didn't have need for slaves? He didn't say we didn't have need for masters, right? He says the masters wouldn't have need for slaves. So I want people to really consider this autonomy that's being developed as a kind of anti-humanism that is being motivated and underlying it.
Yes, so really interesting way of looking at it. Well, my response comes from some evaluation studies that we have done with robots with older people. And what was interesting, the platform that we're using doesn't really look like a human. It's like a cartoon character. So it's the Compy robot, for those of you interested in seeing what it looks like. It's got painted on eyes, and we set it up to come and bring things to people in its little basket on the back and give people reminders about things. And they really, really wanted to and did say please and thank you when they were communicating with it. And we asked them to tell us why they felt they needed to do that, and they said it's polite. That's how we speak to people. And if you take that away, if you say you don't have to, they didn't feel comfortable about that. So that's quite interesting in how.
A humanoid figure.
Yes, yes, but a very basic humanoid figure. It was a, it's a ball with things which are not even eyes. It doesn't have a mouth. But just because it's doing a particular task, they felt compelled to say please and thank you. So one of the things that I actually grapple with a lot is, should something that's doing this be given that human look? Is it necessary? Do we need to make people have that additional cognitive load and that emotional expenditure? And I'm not sure we do. In some contexts, it might work, and in some, it might not. And that's a big, long discussion to be had.
I just want to say, I do think there's something about, if we're getting into sadistic, cruel, abuse of power type situations, that is destructive to those more positive aspects of our relationships with ourselves. But also, I think we can get into idealisation as well, where, I could probably get into a rant about the amount of money spent on pets that are sort of idealising to extraordinary degrees whilst children live in poverty around the world. So that's the other side, isn't it, where... Sorry?
Please do.
I'll start ranting. Yeah. Well, there's something about trying to get something neutral and balanced that we have to strive for. But I think, people who struggle in life, they often don't respect the property in their lives, where they live, the things they own, people in their lives, and they're not happy with the outcome, and something is lost.
So my next question is almost the classic Thomas Piketty, Martin Ford question. And it may be that we'll want to play we're not economists, we don't have to answer this question card at this point, absolutely fine. How do you see the structure of labour and resource distribution changing with the increased robotisation of jobs?
Well, I've just got a grant for 3 years to study that very question. I'll answer it in 3 years.
The classic academic, more study required, please do right funding.
In fact, at Rich, there is a study done by an American group. I think it's published on MIT Review. So, of course, that the use of robot will change jobs, and anything says that the robot will take over our jobs or the robot will not affect our jobs, none of which is a sensible answer. But what is interesting is that what the robot will do is really changing the structure of the job market. So if you see that, in terms of the job distribution, is the middle part that will be affected most. Those jobs that tend to be in the middle class, that, for instance, the bank clerk, and also even in future those lawyers doing convincing and all this people, because this is something that AI, machine, and robot will be able to do better in achieving a realistic quality in terms of job and so on. And this is where the problem goes. And then perhaps that our job market will shift it towards more creativity and those type of things. And this is really posing a very important question. How do we prepare the next generation, and how do we actually structure and prepare in anticipation of such changes? At the other end, there will be those jobs actually are quite difficult to automate, and they still really required. And this, and how do we address this? That these are some of the unanswered questions. That do you want to really be very nature or very word of robot is to do with this job? We don't want to do tedious and difficult and so on, dull and dirty and so on. But some of those are very, very difficult to be automated. So how this will change? But certainly the structure of our job market will change. And it's really that how do we anticipate those changes?
Yes, I agree, and I don't think we are actually attending enough to what the new skills that are required are, and because of that rate of change, which is preceding the preparation, we are going to see a lot of disenchantment with what's happening and the change in the political climate worldwide, etc., because of that fear. So I think it's something we've left too late already.
The European Union have a report out at the minute. It's called a civil report on robotics, and what their solution to more automation of the workforce is to say, okay, if we're going to reclassify robots as in electronic persons. Have you heard of this? And one of the reasons we're going to do that comes back to the corporations idea. But they say if a company takes out workers from the workforce, then that reduces national insurance contributions and taxation. So the introduction of a robot will carry that kind of tax on it as a way to compensate for the unemployment that it produces. So people are exploring different strategies for this at the moment.
Yeah, this is Maddie Galbo's
That's right.
policy working group. It's a position paper rather than a proposal at the moment, but there doesn't seem to be any sensible opposition to it. So frankly, I think it's quite a good idea, but I build robots, so it's quite weird I say that. There's a great story of a politician being taken to see a new car factory that he put millions and millions into over the years. And they open the door and they show him around his plans of these gleaming machines making these fantastic cars. And after about 5 minutes, he turns to his host and says, "This is all very well," he says, "but where are my voters?" Thanks to Professor Yang's heroic timekeeping earlier, we have some time left for questions from the floor. So if anybody wants straight away here. Do we have a spare microphone?
Well, I can start, to be honest. So I've just got a question in terms of what we think is best for older people and care robots. So I think you mentioned at the start about building care robots that offer dignity and independence and choice. And whenever I speak to people in the social care sector about the potential for robots as carers, they're saying no, only humans can provide empathy, and our older residents wouldn't want a robot to care for them. Then I think it was at European Robotics Week, there was a speaker who recently said he interviewed a chap in his 70s who said for things like showering and getting changed, they would actually prefer a robot care worker to a human care worker. So the question is, how do we actually discover and ensure that people, especially as they get older, their choices, their wants and their needs are fully listened to and respected?
Yes, I think that's a really crucial point to consider. One of the things I spend quite a lot of my time doing is editing out whenever people send me stuff where they say robots for care, because I do not associate those two things together. It's robots to support care, but robots could and can't and shouldn't care in the way we see care. And so in terms of responding to the pragmatic situation that we have, we've seen, the video that Tom showed, but in the situation at the moment is quite often people living on their own get to see somebody coming in for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, if they're lucky half an hour, twice a day, and then they're all on their own. They're waiting to get up, they can't go out, and so responding to that particular gap or need, technology can be one solution, but I think one of the things I'm really concerned about is that corporations and governments see this as the solution, and they're not looking more creatively at around how a social situation can be changed. And on my slide where I was trying to put something positive about humanity, there is a group, now it's got worldwide coverage, it's called the Casserole Club. And it's a digital social service where you can sign up to, and if you look around in your area, other people sign up to it, and you can cook a meal, and cook a little bit more, and take it round to somebody who is not able to cook. And I think if we're going to use technology, we need to see how we can combine it with social initiative, rather than just saying, this is a robot and this is what it's going to do. It's going to take over the function that a human is going to be performing.
I wanted to very much echo that view as well, but the issue isn't really one of in some ways robots performing something that human beings can do. And it's much more about how can we see them as complementary, how can we see what robots can actually contribute, but perhaps we don't have the capacity or resource to offer because there isn't enough workers and carers around to provide it. And how can we sort of get away from this very forced dichotomy and see it very much as a situation of as well as opposed to instead of, and consider what robots actually would be much more efficient in being able to provide, but how can they also work together with carers in order to ensure that the company, the companionship, the empathy, and the preservation of community is also very much in place.
Can I answer someone who runs a care company? Add something. So I run a care company, and that's a really good question. I'm pro-robot, hello robot. I don't think, I'm not into this whole they're going to be our able laws or whatever, but I'm quite pro-robot. But one of the interesting things about the answer to that is, yes, there's going to be lots of disasters. So the way that we assess whether somebody wants, what kind of care they want, completely will still depend on the human. So right now we have, we mess it up a lot. We saw those incidences, and we're going to carry on doing that. Whether we've got robot, I mean, I agree with what you both said. Yeah, we are trying to provide a tool. And it's absolutely true also what you said about some people prefer, where it's to do with personal dignity, some people prefer a robot. But the thing that we're avoiding, I think, is all the negatives that are going to happen, and they're going to happen. And I can't wait till I can offer my clients a robotic service alongside a human service. I can't wait. That's amazing. To me, that's progress. But I know at the same time that because we'll be one of the first companies, we're involved in the current project, we'll be one of the first companies doing this, and I know that you have Free Sisters Care in the front pages saying there's been an accident, this robot, humanity. That's going to happen, but somebody has to take that forward. And in the same way that right now we have excellent care and we have terrible care, that will just carry on. It's, we just got to face that, and we just got to be brave and take that plunge. So yeah, wish me luck.
Well, I was just going to say that I think there are similar issues in relation to the Internet of Things used to sort of support people at home. There's some interesting research from UCL about, it's okay being monitored in your lounge, but actually in other parts you don't want it. And we've got to get to understand the user experience, whether it's robots, Internet of Things. So actually we are enhancing and maintaining dignity rather than doing something too similar.
I would like, I understand because there are people in this room who are doing the grassroots work. They're actually engaging day to day with people who have disabilities and who are different, and trying the best with very, very few resources often to do something extraordinary, which is just to make somebody happy and meet their needs. However, I think the real intellectual work has to be something deeper about rediscovering our humanity, and without it, I think the world that we're really entering into is one in the film Surrogates. It's a science fiction, and it's basically set in a future society where people become disconnected from each other. And that is actually what's happening. We can see it in subcultures developing, more and more isolation, more and more alienation, in particularly metropolis places like in Japan, communities now. You've got to imagine this. 100 years ago, very, very few people, unless you were very, very wealthy, or you're a monk or some kind of subculture, could live independently. Now we're creating whole systems in which people can become isolated from each other. And I think that is serious work that we need to do as a society.
I think on that note, I think we should move over to the actual social communication part of the event and perhaps break down some of the isolation in the room. We are bang on time for finishing and doing some networking, hopefully a few more nibbles and drinks. If everybody could just put their hands together and thank our panelists.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the speakers tonight, first of all, who did this event for free. If you want to talk to any of the speakers, I think they should be networking at the end, hopefully. If anyone has any questions about Chiron, you can talk to me or some of my colleagues talking around. Thank you to Three Sisters Care and Chiron for sponsoring this evening. If you ever need a carer in London, it's a great enterprise, except perhaps that's not better than a carer, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
What we're doing, there's free booze outside.
There's free drink. So sorry, yeah. Thanks to Mustaf Chowdhury for the food again, butlers, and to Emotion Robotics and to MG Make, who are also brought robots and they're going to be at the back. And thanks to Google Campus for lending this room. Cheers. Okay.